I was 18 years old the first time I saw my father cry. It wasn't at a funeral, and it wasn't out of sadness. He was kneeling in the mud in the middle of a thunderstorm, holding an arm that had been snapped in two, defeated by the very carpenter he thought was beneath him. For 18 years, I lived in a mansion that everyone in Kentucky admired. But nobody knew it was actually a prison with an iron gate. My father told every boy in town, "She is mine." He thought he was God. But on that rainy night in 1967, he learned that even God can bleed. This isn't just a story about escaping. It's a story about the night the devil finally met his match. If you are listening from anywhere in this wide world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they might shake your faith. There are stories that, no matter how painful, simply must be told. Hello, my sweethearts. It is so good to have you here with me today. Sit down, get comfortable, because Grandma is going to tell a story that I have carried in my chest for many years. My name is Dorothy Mae Miller. I was born and raised right here in the heart of Kentucky. This is my home, honey. It's where the bluegrass runs deep, where the winters can cut you to the bone, and where the smell of curing tobacco and hickory wood smoke hangs heavy in the air come November. Nowadays, my days are very quiet, thank God. Every morning, very early, I wake up to the singing of the birds nesting in the apple tree I have in my backyard. I make my black coffee, strong and dark, the way I learned from my mother when I was a little girl, and I sit on the front porch of my little house. It is a simple house, but it is mine, you understand. Earned with a lot of sweat and tears, but mine. Now, taking a deep breath, I need to talk about something I have carried with me since I was a young girl. A story that few know, but that shaped who I am today. It is about the most terrifying, and at the same time most liberating night of my life. About a father who imprisoned me in a way no one saw, and about a man who became my salvation when I needed it most. This story begins way back when I was still a child, running barefoot on the dirt roads of this same Kentucky. My childhood here in Kentucky began in a large brick farmhouse, out on what they call Old Hickory Road today. But back then it was almost entirely farmland. The house sat on a huge plot of land. It had a high black iron gate, and my father, Walter Eugene Miller, insisted on keeping that gate always locked. He said it was to protect us, that the world out there was too dangerous for his family. My father was a man of possessions. He had land, he raised thoroughbred horses, and sold tobacco. Back then you could still do that, you know? He was respected in town. He always wore a suit, a Stetson hat, and drove a black Lincoln that was the envy of everyone. People greeted him on the street with respect, some even with fear. He had a strong presence, you know? The kind that made everyone go quiet when he walked into a room. My mother, Alice Marie, was a petite woman with brown hair, always tied back in a tight bun. She took care of the house, cooked, did needlepoint, but she was very quiet. Looking back today, I see that she lived on tiptoes, as if she were afraid to make noise. She taught me things in whispers: how to make biscuits, how to wash clothes on the washboard, how to take care of the chickens in the yard, but always looking at the door, always listening for my father's footsteps. I had a brother, Wayne, 3 years older than me. He looked like my father, strong, a man of few words, and from a young age, my father took him to business meetings, teaching him to be a real man. As he said, Wayne protected me when he could, but as he grew up, he became more and more like my father, and that protection disappeared. Our routine was strictly marked. I woke up with the rooster's crow, helped my mother make coffee, fresh biscuits, gravy, apple butter, and cured ham. My father sat at the head of the table, and we ate in silence. We only spoke if he asked something. After breakfast, I had to study. My father hired a private tutor, Mrs. Barbara, because he didn't want me going to school with just anyone, as he said. I liked Mrs. Barbara. She was sweet, patient, taught me to read, write, do math, but the classes were right there inside the house, in the small room my father called the library. I watched through the windows as other children passed by on the street, laughing, playing, and I wanted to be out there with them. When I finished my lessons, I could play in the yard, but only in the yard, never in the street. My father said a girl from a good family didn't wander the streets like a stray. I played alone most of the time. I made little houses with rocks and twigs, talked to the chickens. I climbed the apple tree way in the back. Sometimes Sadie, the daughter of our housekeeper, Mary, played with me. She was my age, had short hair full of little braids, and we invented games of house, school, neighbors, but I noticed that my father didn't like it when Sadie came over. He would look out the window with a serious face and then call Mary to give her orders, and the girl would leave. I would get sad, but I said nothing. We learned from a young age not to cross my father. When I turned about 8 or 9 years old, I started noticing some strange things. My father started paying more attention to me. Not normal fatherly attention, you know. It was different. He asked where I had been, even if I had only been in the yard. He asked who I had talked to, even though I hardly talked to anyone. If Mrs. Barbara praised me because I had done well in a lesson, he would get all proud, but in a way that gave me a tightness in my chest. There was one thing that bothered me a lot. My father wouldn't let me cut my hair. My hair was long, very dark, reaching almost to my waist, and he said it was my princess crown. My mother braided my hair every day, very tight, and my father insisted on seeing it. He would stroke my braids and say, "This is my girl, my pretty girl," and that, even though I was a child, left me with a cold feeling in my stomach. You know that feeling, honey? That instinct deep in your gut that tells you something is wrong, even before you have the words to explain it? I didn't know the word obsession back then, but I knew that the way he looked at me wasn't about love. It was about ownership, like I was a prize horse in his stable, not a child to be raised. At family gatherings, Grandma Betty's birthday, Christmas, Easter, my father put me in a pretty dress and made me stay by his side the whole time. If a cousin or uncle came to talk to me, he would immediately start a conversation and pull me away. I was like an ornament of his, you know? He showed me off to everyone but didn't let anyone get too close. I didn't quite understand what was happening, but there was something heavy in the air of that house. My mother lived tense. My brother didn't play with me anymore, and I felt increasingly alone, even though I was surrounded by people. In winter, when the cold bit and frost covered the yard in white, I sat near the fireplace and stared at the flames. I dreamed of being like that fire, free to dance, to illuminate, to go wherever I wanted. But I was trapped in that big, cold house, with that iron gate always locked, and with a father who looked at me in a way that, even small, I already knew wasn't right. As I grew up, that gaze became heavier, and the gate higher, and the world outside more and more distant. When I turned 13, my body began to change. And with it, my father's behavior changed too. He became more watchful, more present, more suffocating. I remember the day of my 13th birthday as if it were yesterday. My mother had made a carrot cake, my favorite, with cream cheese frosting. She lit 13 little candles and sang happy birthday softly, because my father didn't like noise. When I went to blow out the candles, my father grabbed my hand and said, looking me in the eye in a way that froze me, "Now you are no longer a child, Dorothy. Now you need to be even more careful. The world out there is full of men who want to take advantage of pretty girls. But you are my daughter. I will protect you always." The word always echoed in my head for days. It seemed more like a sentence than a promise. Around that time, my father started taking me with him to some engagements. Meetings with tobacco buyers, dinners with businessmen, Sunday service. He insisted I stay by his side, always in a nice dress, hair down or with a satin ribbon. "This is my daughter Dorothy, the jewel of my house." He introduced me to everyone, grabbing my hand or placing his hand on my back or fixing my hair, always touching me, always marking me as his property. I started feeling the gazes of boys at the service, at the town square, when my father took me to buy fabric at the general store. But it was enough for a boy to look in my direction for my father to get closer, pull me by the arm, and cast a look that made the boy look away quickly. Once, a boy my age, the pharmacist's son, came to talk to me at the exit of the church. He asked my name, said he thought I was pretty. My father appeared out of nowhere, put his hand on the boy's shoulder with such force that I saw him wince in pain, and said very quietly, but with a voice that cut like a knife, "This girl is not for you. Forget she exists." The boy walked away right then, and I felt my face burn with shame. When I was 15, some suitors started appearing, interested in courting me. Small-town stuff, you know? Families knew each other, and parents talked about marriage for their children. Caleb, the son of a landowner, friend of my father, appeared. A handsome, polite boy who had just returned from Louisville, where he was studying. He came to have dinner at the house with his father. During dinner, he tried to talk to me. He asked me some questions about what I liked to do. I answered shyly, happy to finally have someone paying attention to me. After they left, my father called me into the living room. He was standing with his back to me, looking out the window. When he turned around, he had an expression on his face I had never seen before, a mixture of anger and something else, something that scared me. "You are not going to marry that boy, Dorothy," he said, his voice low but firm. "But Daddy, I didn't even try to speak." "I said no!" he shouted, and I jumped in fright. "Do you think I didn't see? I saw how you smiled at him, how you answered his questions all excited. Do you want to abandon me after everything I've done for you?" Tears rolled down my face. "No, Daddy, I don't want to abandon anyone. He walked over, grabbed my face with both hands, squeezing my cheeks. "You are my daughter, mine. No man in this world is going to be good enough for you. None. Do you understand?" I nodded, trembling. There is a chilling difference between protection and possession, and Walter Miller crossed that line long ago. You can feel the walls closing in on Dorothy here, can't you? Keep listening, because this suffocating grip is exactly what triggers the storm that is coming. He let go of me and left the room. I stayed there crying in silence, tasting blood in my mouth where he had squeezed too hard. I didn't just feel like a prisoner. I felt like I was disappearing. That big brick house wasn't just a cell. It was a tomb for the living. My father wasn't just a jailer. He was the only God allowed inside those fences. I would look in the mirror and wonder if the girl looking back was even real, or if she was just a reflection of what Walter Miller wanted to see. After that day, 3 more boys appeared over the following months. They all left after talking to my father. I never knew what he told them, but they came out pale, fear in their eyes, and never looked in my direction again. I didn't just feel like a prisoner. I felt like I was disappearing. That big brick house wasn't just a cell. It was a tomb for the living. My father wasn't just a jailer. He was the only God allowed inside those fences. I would look in the mirror and wonder if the girl looking back was even real, or if she was just a reflection of what Walter Miller wanted to see. I learned to make myself small, honey. I learned to breathe shallow, so I wouldn't take up too much air. I learned that silence was the only shield I had. Where would I go? I was a bird who had forgotten she had wings. I had no money, no friends, and a mother who had turned into a ghost in her own kitchen, stirring gravy and looking through the walls like she wished she could melt right into them. My brother Wayne had run off to Nashville, escaping the suffocation, leaving me alone to carry the weight of our father's obsession. It was when I was 17 that I met Travis. He appeared one afternoon in March of 1966. My father had hired him to do some carpentry work on the property, fix fences, repair the barn, build some new furniture. Travis was from Tennessee. He had come to Kentucky looking for work. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with large, calloused hands of someone who worked hard. But what caught my attention most were his eyes. Dark, deep eyes that seemed to hold stories he never told. He was a man of few words. He arrived early, worked all day almost in silence, and left in the late afternoon. But I noticed that every now and then he looked at me. It wasn't a bold look. No, it was different. It was a look of someone who understood, as if he saw that I was trapped there and felt pity. One day I was in the yard hanging clothes on the line. My mother had stayed in bed with a headache, and Travis was fixing the back fence. I felt him looking at me. I turned my head, and our eyes met. He didn't look away. Neither did I. We stayed like that for a few seconds that seemed eternal. My heart beat so hard, I thought he would hear it from where he was. He went back to his work, but that night I couldn't sleep. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. In the following days, we started exchanging small, quick glances, always careful not to let my father see. Once, when he passed by me carrying a board, he said very quietly, almost in a whisper, "You deserve to be free," and kept walking as if nothing had happened. Those words moved me in a way I cannot explain. Someone had seen my prison. Someone understood. We started communicating in secret. He left notes hidden under a rock at the bottom of the yard near the apple tree. I answered and left them in the same place. They were simple notes, short, but loaded with meaning. "Are you okay today? I thought of you. Don't give up." My father suspected nothing. To him, Travis was just another employee, a quiet man who did his job and left. But for me, Travis was becoming the only light in the darkness I lived in. One day, in a note, he wrote, "I can get you out of here if you want." I grabbed that paper with trembling hands. I cried for the first time in years. I cried with relief. Someone was offering me a way out, Someone was willing to save me. I wrote back, "Yes, please." It is a terrifying moment when you have to decide if the unknown is scarier than the prison you know. Dorothy is holding a lifeline in her trembling hands, but grabbing it means risking absolutely everything. But as we are about to see, making the choice is the easy part. Surviving the consequences is a whole other story. Some of you might think I was foolish to trust a man I barely knew, and maybe I was. But when you are drowning, child, you don't ask the hand that reaches for you if it's clean or dirty. You just grab it. I didn't know if I was running toward heaven or hell. I just knew I couldn't stay in purgatory 1 second longer. And that is how our escape plan began, disguised as a marriage. But we still didn't imagine what my father would be capable of doing when he found out. The following months were the hardest of my life until then. Travis and I continued exchanging notes under that rock, but we had to be extremely careful. My father had finished hiring him for the jobs, but Travis found a way to stay close. He got a job at a sawmill near here, in Lexington, and sometimes on Sunday mornings, very early, when my father went to the fields to check the cattle, we met quickly. There was an abandoned chapel on the old road heading toward Tennessee, hidden among the pines. That was where we met. I invented excuses. I told my mother I was going to Mrs. Barbara's house to get some books, or that I was going to the general store to buy thread for embroidery. My mother, poor thing, never suspected. Or if she suspected, she pretended she didn't see, perhaps afraid of what my father would do if he knew she had let me go out. In those meetings, Travis told me about his life. He had grown up alone. His parents had died when he was young, raised by an uncle who beat him for anything. He had learned to defend himself early, not to trust anyone, to keep everything inside. But with me, he opened up. He told me he had never felt anything like what he felt for me, that he would protect me from anything, that we would get out of there together. I believed him. I had to believe him. He was my only hope. But it wasn't just about escaping, you understand? It was about being seen. For the first time, a man looked at me and didn't see a prize, or a doll, or a possession. Travis looked at me and saw a person with a heart that was beating just as scared as a rabbit's in a trap. When he left those notes, he wasn't just giving me a plan. He was giving me back my name. He was telling me that Dorothy Mae Miller existed outside of that iron gate. And that, my dears, is a powerful thing. To be loved for who you are, not for who you belong to. But as the months went by, my father began to notice that I was different. I couldn't hide the small light of hope that had been born inside me. He noticed it, and he didn't like it at all. One night, in September 1966, my father called me into his study. He was sitting behind the massive oak desk, fingers interlaced, looking at me with that gaze I had learned to fear. "Sit down, Dorothy," he said, pointing to the chair in front of the desk. I sat down, hands sweating, heart racing. "You're acting different," he began, his voice too calm, which was always a bad sign. "Smiling more, distracted, as if you were thinking about something, or someone." "No, Daddy. I tried to speak." He raised his hand, silencing me. "I am not a fool, Dorothy. I know when someone is hiding something from me, and you, my daughter, are hiding something from me." The silence in the room was so heavy I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. He stood up, walked around the desk, stood beside me, put his hand on my shoulder, squeezing. "You don't need anyone. Do you understand? You have everything here. You have this house, you have food, you have nice clothes, you have your father who takes care of you. What man in this world could give you more than I give you?" His hand squeezed harder, and I held back the urge to cry. "None, Daddy," I whispered. "Exactly. None. So stop this nonsense of dreaming about Prince Charming. That doesn't exist. What exists is me, taking care of you, protecting you always." He let go of me and went back behind the desk. "You can go." I left there trembling, but more determined than ever. I needed to get out of that house. I needed Travis. The next day I left a note for him under the rock. "My father is suspicious. We have to hurry." Travis replied the same day. "I will find a way. Trust me." And he found a way. He discovered that if we went to London, a neighboring town where no one knew us well, we could get married at the courthouse without needing my father's permission. I was of legal age. I had turned 18 inches October, 1966. Legally, I could marry on my own. We planned everything in secret. On the 15th of January, 1967, a Monday with bright sun and blue sky, I told my mother I was going to Mrs. Barbara's house to spend the afternoon there, helping her organize some books. My mother nodded, without looking me in the eye. To this day I wonder if she knew, if she had guessed my plan and let me go because deep down she wanted me to be free. We women speak a language without words, don't we? In that silence, my mother wasn't ignoring me. She was giving me the only gift she had left to give. Her permission. She knew that if she spoke, she might break down and beg me to stay. So she let me go, breaking her own heart so mine could have a chance to beat. I left home with a small bundle hidden under my coat. I had a change of clothes, my birth certificate that I had stolen from my father's desk drawer, and a photo of my mother. Just that. I left everything behind. Travis was waiting for me on the old road, near the chapel, with a truck borrowed from a friend. We went straight to London. At the county clerk's office, we signed the papers with trembling hands. I became Dorothy May Ray, wife of Travis Ray. The clerk, a man with a gray mustache, looked at us and said, "Are you running from something?" Travis replied with a firm voice, "Yes, but now we are running together." The man nodded and stamped the papers. "Then get going, and good luck." We left there married, but we knew the worst was yet to come. My father would find out, and when he found out, he wouldn't accept it. Travis had rented a cabin in the mountains near the Smoky Mountains, in an isolated place, surrounded by pines and thick woods. He said we had to stay hidden for a few days until things calmed down, until we could plan where we were going to live, how we were going to start over. We arrived at the cabin in the late afternoon. It was a simple wooden construction with a fireplace, a double bed, a small kitchen, and a porch overlooking the endless green of the mountains. It seemed like a dream. Finally, I was free. But that night, when I lay in bed next to Travis, I felt a tightness in my chest, a bad feeling, as if something was about to happen. Travis grabbed my hand and said, "Everything is fine now. You are safe with me." I wanted to believe him, but deep down I knew my father wouldn't leave things like that. He had said so many times, "You are mine." Always. And men like him didn't accept losing what they considered theirs. I didn't know that that very night, while the cold wind whistled outside and the rain began to fall hard on the roof, my father was already coming after me. He had found out where I was and was coming to take me back. The storm began around 9 p.m. The wind shook the cabin windows with a force that seemed to want to tear everything out of place. The rain pounded on the wooden roof like 1,000 fingers drumming endlessly, and thunder exploded outside, making the whole structure shake to its foundations. The smell of wet earth came in through the cracks in the windows, mixed with the aroma of smoke from the fireplace that Travis had lit to warm the room. He hugged me tight, saying everything was fine, that we were safe there, protected by the thick woods and the isolation of those mountains. I tried to believe. I wanted so much to believe. We ate a stew he had prepared, made with potatoes, carrots, and pieces of sausage he had bought on the way. The heat of the stew going down my throat brought me a momentary comfort. We talked about the future, where we were going to live, what kind of life we were going to build together. He talked about going to the countryside, buying a piece of land, raising some animals, planting a garden, having children. 3 at least, he said, smiling in a way that lit up his face. I smiled back, imagining that simple and free life I had always dreamed of. A life where no one would tell me I was anyone's property. Around 11 p.m., we went to bed. I was exhausted. It had been a long day, full of emotions that had drained me completely. The fear of the escape, the adrenaline of the secret marriage, the hope of a new life, the trip to the cabin. Everything had left me exhausted, as if they had ripped every drop of energy from my body. Travis hugged me from behind, his warm body against mine, his heavy and protective arm over my waist. I felt for the first time in my life what it was to feel truly protected, not imprisoned. It was different. It was like breathing pure air after years of breathing ashes. It was good. It was peace. I was almost falling asleep. Already in that zone between being awake and asleep, when I heard a different noise outside, a creak of wood maybe, or the sound of an engine drowned out by the rain. I thought it would be a branch falling from the wind, so I didn't worry. I closed my eyes again, letting the sound of the rain lull me. The noise of the storm was so loud and so constant that it drowned out any other sound. It was as if the world outside had disappeared and only that cabin existed, that bed, that wool blanket that smelled of mothballs. me, and Travis. But then, in an instant that was etched in my memory like red-hot iron marking flesh, the bedroom door was kicked down. The crash was so loud that for a second I thought lightning had struck the house. Wood splintering into pieces, hinges snapping with a horrible metallic crack, screws flying. I jumped in the bed, my heart racing so fast it seemed like it was going to come out of my mouth, not understanding what was happening. My mind still caught between sleep and wakefulness. Travis was already getting up in a quick and instinctive movement, positioning his body in front of mine like a human shield. And then I saw my father. He was standing in the frame of the destroyed door, soaked by the rain. The black suit he cherished so much clinging to his body like a second skin. His gray hair, always well-combed, now messy, dripping dirty water onto the wooden floor. His face red with rage or effort or both. And the eyes, my God, the eyes, I will never forget those eyes. They weren't human eyes. They were the eyes of something that had completely lost reason, completely lost humanity. Something wild, wounded, dangerous, like a cornered animal deciding to attack. He didn't look at Travis even once. It was as if my husband didn't even exist there, as if he were invisible and irrelevant. He looked directly at me, and in that look, I saw everything. The obsession he had kept for years, the rage of having been crossed, the madness that had remained hidden behind that mask of a respectable father he wore in town. "Dorothy," he said, his voice low but cutting, like broken glass tearing skin. "Get out of that bed right now." I couldn't move. My body had turned to stone. I was paralyzed with fear, the same fear I felt when I was a child and heard him coming up the stairs of the house at night. Travis took a step forward, putting himself between my father and me, his broad shoulders blocking my view. "You have no right to be here," Travis said, his voice calm but firm, every word measured. "She is my wife. We are legally married now. There is a signed paper, recognized at the county clerk's office." My father laughed. It was a horrible laugh, hoarse, without any trace of joy, only bitterness and contempt. "Wife? Do you think a paper changes anything? A paper is just paper. She is my daughter, mine. I raised her. I fed her. I took care of her all these years. No paper is going to change that. No man is going to take her from me." He advanced into the room with heavy steps, and that was when everything happened too fast and too slow at the same time. My father went straight past Travis, or tried to pass, pushing him with his shoulder, and came straight towards the bed like an enraged bull. He leaned over me and grabbed my long hair with both hands, winding the strands around his fingers with such force that I felt my scalp burn with pain, as if it were on fire. I screamed a scream that came from the bottom of my soul, a scream of pure, primal terror that I didn't even know existed inside me. "You are not giving yourself to him," my father shouted, pulling my hair without mercy, dragging me to the edge of the bed, my body sliding on the sheets. "You are mine. Nobody touches what is mine. Nobody. You are going back home and forgetting this man exists." This is the nightmare scenario every survivor dreads the moment the past comes kicking down the door to drag you back. It looks like the end for Dorothy's freedom. But Walter made one fatal mistake. He forgot he wasn't the only dangerous man in that room. I grabbed the sheets in absolute desperation, my nails digging into the fabric with such force that I heard threads snapping, my whole body resisting, my legs kicking the air, trying to find support, but he was much stronger. He pulled me, dragged me, as if I were a rag doll, and I felt I was being torn apart inside. It wasn't just the physical pain of my hair being pulled out, whole clumps coming out by the root. It was the pain of seeing that he was never going to leave me alone. Never. Even married, even an adult, even having fled to a place where no one knew who we were. He had found me, had come to get me, was going to take me back, was going to lock me in that house again, in that room, behind that iron gate. And this time I knew in the bottom of my soul that there would be no more escape. He was going to watch me day and night. He was going to kill me while I was still alive. "Daddy, please!" I screamed, crying, begging, my voice coming out strangled. "Let me go. Let me go. Please." But he didn't let go. He continued dragging me with that superhuman strength that rage gives people. And I continued holding onto the sheets that were already coming off the mattress, fighting, screaming, crying, feeling that my life had ended there, that everything had been useless, the escape, the marriage, the hope of being free. Everything had been an illusion. I was never going to escape him. "You are going back home with me," he said, growling the words between clenched teeth. And you are going to forget this man exists. You are going to forget all this ridiculous marriage, this pathetic escape, because you are not his, you never will be. You are my daughter, my girl, mine. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't my body despite the pain. It was something much deeper. It was my soul. I felt as if all the air had left my lungs and was never going to return. I felt I was going to die there in that cabin lost in the mountains, dragged by that man who was supposed to protect me, but who in truth was my greatest executioner, my greatest nightmare, the person who had hurt me most in life. And the worst, no one would know. No one would look for me. We were alone there. It was when I looked at Travis. He was standing a few steps away, regaining his balance after the shove, and the expression on his face had changed completely. He was no longer the gentle and quiet man I knew, the one who spoke softly and smiled shyly. His eyes were dark, cold, empty of any emotion I could recognize. But at the same time, there was something burning deep down, very deep down, something I couldn't name, but that gave me a chill that ran down my spine. He was no longer afraid. He was no longer hesitating. He was no longer weighing the consequences. He was decided. And in that endless second, while my father continued dragging me and I continued screaming and crying, I saw Travis move. It wasn't a rushed, desperate movement. It was calculated, precise, controlled, as if he had done it 1,000 times before, as if some part of him that was asleep had woken up. The storm outside continued to roar. The wind howled through the trees. The rain continued to fall like a waterfall on the roof. And inside that isolated cabin in the middle of the mountains, surrounded by pines and darkness, something was about to happen. Something violent, something definitive, something that was going to change everything forever. Something that was going to free me once and for all from that man. But I still didn't know the price that would be paid for that freedom, and I still didn't know who the man I had married really was. What happened in the next few seconds changed my life forever. Travis didn't scream, didn't panic, didn't freeze in fear as most men would in front of someone so furious and determined as my father. He moved with a calm that was almost supernatural, as if time had slowed down just for him, as if every movement had been planned in advance, rehearsed 1,000 times somewhere dark in his mind. I saw everything happen as if I were watching from outside my own body. Fear had left me in that strange state, where everything seems very sharp and very distant at the same time. He advanced, but it wasn't a clumsy advance of someone desperate trying to help. It was precise, calculated, professional. It was the advance of a predator who had observed his prey long enough and now finally decided to strike. His muscles moved with terrifying efficiency, without wasted energy, without hesitation. He passed by me at a speed I could barely follow, and before my father could react or drag me a single inch further, Travis grabbed his arm, the arm that was holding my hair, causing me so much pain. Travis's fingers closed around my father's wrist like an iron vice, squeezing with a force I could see by the tensed muscles of his forearm. And I saw the expression on my father's face change. First it was surprise, then discomfort. And then when he finally really looked at Travis, it was fear, genuine fear. He had finally looked at the man he had underestimated. And what he saw in that face scared even him. A man who had spent his life terrifying others. Travis made a sharp, quick, precise movement, twisting my father's arm in a way that wasn't natural, forcing the joints beyond what they were made to withstand. And I heard, my God, I heard a horrible crack, like a dry branch breaking under a heavy boot. Then another crack, immediately following that one even louder. 2 places. My father's arm had broken in 2 different places. I could see it, even in the dim light of the cabin, lit only by the fireplace, the strange shape the arm had taken. My father let go of my hair immediately. His hands, the one that still worked, flew to the broken arm in an instinct to protect, to hold, to try to make the pain stop. He let out a scream I had never heard come out of that man. Never. In all the years I lived with him, in all the rage I had seen in him, I had never heard that sound. It wasn't a scream of rage or indignation. It was a scream of pure, uncontrollable, visceral, animal pain. The scream of someone who had been broken. He fell to his knees on the wooden floor of the cabin with a dull thud, still holding the arm that now hung at an absolutely wrong angle, horrible to see. The man who had always been so strong, so imposing, so terrifying all my life, was there on the floor at my feet, moaning in pain, reduced to absolutely nothing. I crawled backward on the bed, still clutching the crumpled sheets, trembling from head to toe, my teeth chattering, unable to fully process what was happening. My scalp burned terribly where he had pulled me. Clumps of dark hair scattered on the white sheet like threads of black silk pulled out by the root. But I was free. He had let go of me. His hands were no longer on me. Travis didn't stop, didn't hesitate for a second. He bent down, grabbed my father by the collar of his soaked suit with one hand, the fabric making a wet sound when he grabbed it, and by the throat with the other. His fingers closed around my father's neck, and then, in a movement that seemed physically impossible, he lifted my father off the ground. He lifted a grown man, heavy, over 180 pounds, as if he weighed absolutely nothing, as if he were a rag doll. My father's feet were left dangling in the air, kicking, searching for support desperately, support that didn't exist. His legs kicked the air uselessly. Travis pressed him against the wooden wall of the cabin with such force that I heard the wood creak, splitting under the impact of the body. Bits of wood splinters fell to the floor. A small picture hanging nearby shook and fell. The expression on Travis's face was something I will never forget for the rest of my life. There was no anger there. There was no hate, no satisfaction or pleasure. It was void, completely empty, cold. It was the expression of someone who had done that so many times before that he felt nothing anymore. No emotion, no guilt, no doubt. It was the expression of someone truly dangerous, much more dangerous than my father could ever dream of being. It scares you, doesn't it? To think that the hero of the story had darkness in him too. But listen to me. Sometimes, the only thing that can stop a monster is a bigger, scarier monster. Travis didn't become a wolf to hurt me. He became a wolf to tear apart the dog that was hunting me. And in that moment, I didn't care about his past. I only cared that he was the wall standing between me and my destruction. My father tried to speak, mouth opening and closing, tried to breathe, choking. His hands, the one that still worked, and the one on the broken arm he could barely move, scratching Travis's arm uselessly, nails scraping the fabric of his shirt, eyes bulging out of their sockets, full of absolute terror. For the first time in my entire life, I saw my father afraid. Real fear, not anger disguised as fear. Genuine fear. Fear of dying. The man who terrified everyone around him, who controlled everything and everyone with an iron fist, was terrified. He was seeing his own death in the eyes of another man. Travis brought his face close to my father's face, slowly, deliberately, so close their noses almost touched, so close they breathed the same air. And then he whispered. The voice was low, almost gentle, but loaded with a coldness that cut deeper than any scream. And in the stillness of that cabin, the storm outside had diminished considerably, as if even nature had stopped to witness that. To witness that transfer of power, I heard every word, every syllable. I know what you did to her all these years, Travis said. The voice frozen like the cold wind that blew in the mountains, every word chosen with surgical precision. I saw it in her eyes. I saw the way she is afraid of you. I saw how she shrinks when you get close. I know exactly what you are. I know men like you. My father tried to deny, tried to say something, lips moving desperately, but Travis's hand squeezed his throat tighter, cutting off the words completely, cutting off the air. You are not going near her ever again, Travis continued. And now there was something in his voice. It wasn't anger. It was a promise, a conditional death sentence. Never again. You are not going to look for her. You are not going to send anyone after her. You are not going to write. You are not going to appear. You are going to forget she exists, because if you come back— He paused, letting the words hang in the air like lead, letting the silence speak for him. If you try anything, if you send anyone after her, if you even think about her the wrong way— Another longer, heavier pause. I won't break your arm. I will tear your head off your body. And it is not an empty threat. I have done worse, for much less. And I won't have a second of remorse. And just like that, the power dynamic shifts forever. It is a brutal, necessary violence that reminds us that sometimes monsters only understand one language. Witnessing this is intense. But stay with me, because what happens after the violence settles is what truly defines their future. My father's entire body went completely paralyzed with terror. Even the pain of the broken arm seemed to have been forgotten in the face of the real, concrete threat he was hearing. He believed— I saw in his eyes that he believed every word. Maybe it was the way Travis spoke without emotion, just facts. Maybe it was the absolutely cold eyes. Maybe it was the fact that he had broken his arm in 2 places in a matter of seconds, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. But my father believed, and for the first time understood he had found someone stronger, someone more dangerous. Travis let go of his throat abruptly, but before my father could fall or regain his balance, Travis grabbed him again by the suit, spun him with force, and practically threw him. He threw him toward the destroyed door. My father stumbled, tripped over his own feet that barely responded, and fell face down in the puddle of mud and rainwater that had formed right at the entrance of the cabin. His body made a wet, dirty sound hitting the mud. The broken arm twisted under him, and he screamed again. A scream drowned out by the mud that entered his mouth. He was soaked, covered in brown mud, sticking to the expensive suit, the face, the hair. He was moaning in pain, holding the arm that hung uselessly. He was humiliated in a way I had never seen, destroyed, broken, not only physically, but in his pride, in his authority, in everything he thought he was. Travis walked to the door with slow, measured steps and looked at my father down there in the mud. Looked down literally and figuratively, and said with a voice loaded with an authority that accepted no type of questioning, "Go now, and don't come back. Because if I see you again, there won't be a conversation." My father got up with extreme difficulty, slipping in the mud twice before being able to stand, holding the broken arm against his chest in a protective and useless gesture. The rain was falling on him, weaker now, but still constant, mixing with tears. Tears. Never had I seen that man cry. Not when his mother died, not when he lost money in business, never. But there he was, crying like a child, broken and defeated. He looked at me one last time through the open door, and for a second that lasted an eternity, I thought he was going to try again, that he was going to say something, do something. But then he saw Travis standing there in the doorway, motionless like a statue, waiting, almost wishing he would try, and something in him surrendered completely. The last spark of fight died in his eyes. He turned slowly, painfully, and began to walk limping toward the car that was parked on the dirt path, disappearing into the darkness and the rain that was still falling. We stood there, completely motionless, listening to the sound of his boots in the mud, the sound of the car door opening and closing, the sound of the engine starting after a few tries, the car turning around on the narrow path, tires spinning in the mud, almost getting stuck, and finally the sound of the engine moving away, getting weaker, more distant, disappearing completely into the night. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with the truth. The God of my childhood, the man who made the earth shake with his boots, was just a broken old man running away in the rain. It's a strange thing to watch your fear evaporate, realizing that the giant you were afraid of was just a shadow on the wall all along. When the silence returned, only the rain falling weaker now, only the wind whistling through the pines, only the low crackle of the fireplace still lit. Travis turned to me, and for the first time since everything had started, I was afraid of him. It wasn't the same fear I had of my father. It was different. It was fear of not really knowing the person I had married. Fear of what he had been, of what he was capable of doing, of what I had just witnessed. He saw the fear in my eyes. I know he saw it. It was impossible not to see. And something in his expression broke instantly. All that coldness, all that distance, all that controlled violence disappeared. His shoulders slumped. His whole body seemed to wilt. He took a step in my direction, hand extended, but stopped immediately when he saw me shrink back instinctively, my body reacting before my mind could process. "Dorothy," he said, and his voice trembled. For the first time, it trembled. I'm sorry you saw that. I'm sorry you saw what I am capable of doing, what I once was." I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. I was processing everything. The man who had terrified me all my life was out there broken, defeated, fleeing into the dark like a wounded animal. And the man who saved me was here in front of me, blood on his hands metaphorically, at least trembling, afraid of losing me. "I am not that person anymore," he continued, voice low-loaded with what seemed like genuine pain, deep regret. "I was a long time ago, when I was younger, much younger, before I met you, before I knew it was possible to be different. I was violent. I hurt people. I did terrible things, things I have no pride in, things that haunt me to this day. That's why I left Tennessee. That's why I came here, to Kentucky, to start over, to let that man die and be someone different, someone better." He ran his hand through his hair, wet with rain and sweat, eyes shining with what looked like tears suppressed for a long time. I swore to myself that I would never use that part of me again, that I had left it dead, buried back in Tennessee, along with everything I did wrong. But when I saw you being hurt, when I heard you scream like that, when I saw the terror in your eyes, his voice failed completely. I brought him back. I resurrected that man I had sworn to bury. For you, only for you. Because losing you would be worse than going back to being what I was. This is a profound moment of vulnerability. Travis didn't just break a bone. He broke his own vow of peace to save the woman he loves. Now that the dust has settled, we have to ask, can a life built on such a violent foundation actually find peace? Let's find out. Tears rolled down my face, hot, releasing all the accumulated tension. I didn't know what to feel. Fear, relief, gratitude, confusion. Maybe everything at the same time. Maybe no single feeling was enough to describe that. He won't come back, Travis said. Voice firmer now, more confident, returning to control. Men like him, when they find someone stronger, someone more dangerous, they back down. They are only brave with those who are weaker. They only attack those who cannot defend themselves. You are free of him now, truly, forever. And that was when it really hit me. I was free, really, completely, totally free. The monster that had imprisoned me all my life was gone, defeated, humiliated, with a broken arm and ego shattered into 1,000 pieces. He was never going to be able to control me again. He was never going to be able to touch me again. He was never going to be able to look at me that way again. He was never going to be able to call me his again. It was brutal. It was bloody. Although without visible blood, it was violent in a way I never imagined I would witness in my life. But it was the night I finally, for the first time in 18 years, felt safe. The night I discovered that the man who loved me was willing to bring back his own demons to protect me from mine. The night I became truly free, not on paper. That had happened at the county clerk's office, but truly free, free in soul. I got out of bed slowly, legs still shaky, and walked to Travis. He stood completely still, without moving a millimeter, as if he were afraid of scaring me, of making me run, of losing me. I grabbed his face with both hands, feeling the rough stubble against my palms, and looked deep into his eyes. Those eyes that had been so cold, so empty minutes ago, but that now were full of concern, vulnerability, and genuine fear of losing me. Thank you, I whispered, voice coming out weak, but sincere. Thank you for saving me, for freeing me, for being strong when I couldn't be. He hugged me then, and I allowed it. I surrendered to that hug completely. But listen to me closely, my dears, because this is the most important part. The movies tell you that once the monster is defeated, the music swells and everything is perfect. Life isn't a movie. Peace didn't come all at once. It came slow, like a shy deer stepping into a clearing. It took me years to stop waiting for the punishment, to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Healing isn't a magic trick. It's a daily practice of reminding yourself that you are safe. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, while the storm finally broke. The clouds parted slowly, and the first golden ray of morning sun began to pierce through the wet pines, illuminating the wreckage of the door and the beginning of our new life. But listen to me closely, my dears, because this is the most important part. The movies tell you that once the monster is defeated, the music swells and everything is perfect. Life isn't a movie. Peace didn't come all at once like that sunrise. No, ma'am. Peace came slow, like a shy deer stepping into a clearing, terrified of snapping a twig. For the first year, I was a bundle of nerves. I jumped at every car door that slammed. I checked the locks on our little rental house 3 times before bed. I would wake up in a cold sweat, screaming, certain I could hear the tires of my father's black Lincoln crunching on the gravel. And Travis. Oh, my sweet patient Travis. He didn't say, get over it. He didn't say, he's gone. Stop crying. He knew that the bruises on my soul were deeper than the ones on my scalp. He just held me. He held me until my shaking stopped, proving night after night that his hands were made for building and loving, not for hurting. That was the real healing. Not the violence of that night. That was just survival. The healing was the quiet patience that came after. The healing was learning that love didn't mean ownership. It took me years to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, to stop waiting for punishment just for being happy. Today, at 76 years old, I live here in Kentucky, the same state where I was born, where I grew up imprisoned, and where I learned what it is to be truly free. It seems strange, doesn't it, returning to the place where it all began? But this place doesn't scare me anymore. It is mine now, my way, on my terms. After that night in the cabin, Travis and I came back here. We rented a simple little house in a working-class neighborhood, far from that big house with the iron gate where I had grown up. My father never appeared again. Not once. But he didn't disappear overnight. We heard whispers in town that for a week he locked himself in that big house, didn't come out, didn't see anyone. His pride was broken, and for a man like Walter Miller, humiliation was a poison he couldn't swallow. A month later, signs went up. He sold the land, the horses, the house. Everything went for pennies on the dollar because he just wanted out. He left my mother behind, like she was an old piece of furniture he didn't want to move. He moved to a small town in rural Missouri where no one knew his name or his shame. He died about 10 years later, alone. When I got the call, I didn't feel relief, nor sadness. I felt nothing, just a quiet closing of a door. My mother, bless her heart, finally found her own voice when he left her. She went to live with her sister in Louisville for a while, learning how to breathe again without asking for permission. A few years later, when the children were born, she came to live with me and Travis. We never talked about what had happened. She never asked, and I never told, but I saw a silent gratitude in her eyes. She lived with us until she passed away in 1985, falling asleep in the armchair after lunch, peaceful. It was a good death, you know? Without pain, without fear, different from how she had lived. Travis and I had 3 children. Hunter, who was born in 1968, Savannah in 1970, and Wyatt, the youngest, in 1973. I raised them differently from how I was raised. They had freedom. They had affection without prisons. They had a father who was present, protective, but who was never controlling. Travis learned to be gentle without being weak, to be firm without being violent. He became the man he wanted to be, and I was proud of him every day. We worked hard. He continued with carpentry, made custom furniture, and became known in town for the beautiful work he did. I sewed for people, made clothes for the neighbors' children, embroidered wedding dresses. We didn't have much, but we had enough, and we had peace. Oh, how we had peace. It was 50 years of marriage, 50 years of waking up by his side, of drinking black coffee together on the porch, of raising children, of seeing grandchildren born. 50 years of a simple life, but full of true love. He never again needed to be that man he was that night. That remained kept, buried, and only came out once to save me. When he passed away 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack while working in the shop, I thought I wouldn't be able to go on. But I went on for the children, for the grandchildren, and for myself because he would have wanted me to go on. Today, I live in this little house we bought together in 1975, here in Kentucky, in a quiet neighborhood. Yes, the same town, but on the other side, far away. It is a small brick house, with a little yard that I adore. I have my pots of herbs that I take care of every day. The rosemary grew so much it became almost a bush. I have my chickens that give me fresh eggs every morning. I have the apple tree I planted as soon as we moved here, and that today already gives sweet fruit with which I make apple butter for the grandchildren. My 3 children live here in Kentucky too. Hunter is an accountant, married to Ashley. He has 2 grown children. Savannah is a teacher, just like Mrs. Barbara, who taught me as a child, and has 3 children. Wyatt is a mechanic, works with trucks, and has a daughter, Harper, who is my granddaughter most attached to me, the one who taught me to use the computer. They come to visit me every week, taking turns. On Sunday, there is always someone here to eat with me. We make those old-fashioned meals: pot roast, fried chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. The house fills with noise, laughter, life. It is so different from that silent house where I grew up, where fear lived in every corner. Every Wednesday, I go to the church bazaar to sell my embroidery. It's not for the money. The children want to help me, but I insist on having my independence. It's more for the company, you know? I talk to the other ladies, we swap recipes, I find out the neighborhood news. Life is good when it is simple like this. Sometimes, when I am alone here on the porch drinking my coffee in the late afternoon, I think about that night, about the storm, the fear, the violence, and how that, as terrible as it was my liberation. It was the day I stopped being someone's property and became the owner of myself. I am not angry at my father. I no longer have pity. Pity for a man who loved so wrongly that he destroyed himself and almost destroyed his daughter. But he didn't succeed. I survived. I won. I lived a beautiful life, full of true love, and raised children who know what respect is, what freedom is, what real love is. I look at Travis's portrait hanging on the living room wall. The photo was taken on our 40th wedding anniversary, and I give thanks. I give thanks that he was brave enough to use that terrible strength he had stored away to protect me. I give thanks that he was gentle enough to never need to use it again. I give thanks for 50 years of a life I never thought was possible to have. Life is curious, you know? We are born in a prison, we learn to survive, and one day, if we are lucky, we find someone who breaks the chains. Travis was my key, my liberation, my home, and today, in this simple house, surrounded by my children and grandchildren, with my garden blooming and my chickens scratching in the yard, I am complete, I am free, I am happy. My dears, my loves, if there is anyone out there listening to me who is going through something similar to what I went through, I want to tell you something. True love does not imprison. True love does not control. True love does not make you afraid. I took 18 years to understand that. 18 years thinking that was normal, that fathers were like that I had to accept it. But no, my child, no, no one, not father, not mother, not husband, not anyone has the right to treat you like property. You are not an object, you are a person. You have the right to be free. I learned that there is a difference between protection and prison. Protection gives you wings, teaches you to fly, and stays close by in case you fall. Prison cuts your wings, keeps you on the ground, and convinces you that you were born to crawl. This right here is the true victory. Dorothy didn't just escape a house. She broke a generational curse. She took all that pain and transformed it into a safe haven for her children and grandchildren. That is the definition of strength. If her journey has touched your heart, stay with us for one final moment. Grandma Dorothy has a special request that might be the sign you, or someone you love, has been waiting for. If someone says they love you, but isolates you, controls you, diminishes you, my dear, that is not love, that is possession. And you were not born to be owned by anyone. I learned that courage is not having no fear. Courage is having fear and taking the step anyway. I was so afraid that Monday in January, when I signed those papers at the county clerk's office, my hands were trembling, but I signed because living with fear every day is worse than having courage for one day. I learned that sometimes liberation comes in ways we don't expect. It comes brutal, it comes violent, it comes painful. That stormy night was terrifying, but it was my liberation, and I am not ashamed to have needed help. I am not ashamed that someone had to be strong for me when I couldn't be. We don't have to be strong alone. We have to find those who are strong with us, not against us. I learned that starting over is always possible. It is possible. I started over at 18. You can start over at whatever age you are. It is never too late to choose freedom. It is never too late to choose life. If you are trapped in a house where they control you, where they diminish you, where they make you feel you are worth nothing, listen to what this grandma is telling you. You are worth everything. You deserve to be free. And there are people ready to help you. There are authorities in your country. There are organizations. There are people who understand. You don't have to suffer alone. And if you know someone who is in that situation, don't pretend you don't see it. Reach out a hand. Sometimes a word, a gesture, an open door can save a life. It can be the difference between staying trapped and finally being free. I had 50 years of happiness after a night of terror. 50 years. 3 children, grandchildren, a life full of true love. It was worth every tear, every fear, every pain. Because today I am free, and you can be too. They say time heals all wounds, sugar, but I say time just gives you thicker skin. I don't look back at that cabin with fear anymore. I look back at it as the place where the frightened little girl died, and the woman I am today was born. Scars don't mean you're broken. They just mean you were stronger than whatever tried to hurt you. I wear my past like an old coat. It's heavy, but it keeps me warm because I know I survived the winter. If you are still standing after everything life has thrown at you, if you are fighting a battle nobody sees, I want you to claim your victory today. Do me a small kindness and go down to the comments right now. Type just one word for me. Unbroken. Let me see that word. Let's show the world that we might bend, but we never break. I'll be reading every single one of your names, Take care of your heart, my loves. Grandma will be waiting for you in the next story.